is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. 20 years ago, the band OK Go revolutionized music videos in the digital age with their song, Here It Goes Again. Last year, the band returned with a new album called And the Adjacent Possible. OK Go will perform later this hour. But first, let's get things started with the Doobie Brothers. What a Fool Believes is just one of the many hits the Doobie Brothers have written over the years. And as a result, members of the band were inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame last year. For their latest album, Walk This Road, the Doobie Brothers welcome back a founding member to the band, Michael McDonald, and his swooning voice. Let's listen to the title track.
What will be. The path will lead us on. Well, we don't have much, but love is all we need. Walk this road with me. Walk this road with me.
Around the album release, all four members of the Doobie Brothers joined me for a listening party. Michael McDonald, Tom Johnston, John McFee, and Patrick Simmons. Micah McDonald told me more about the inspiration for the title track we just heard.
Well, John Shanks was the title he had, and he, it was probably, I think, the second thing I wrote with him, and for the album, he expressed an interest in writing something that would be kind of focused on the band's long relationship and the fact that we were, had been together so long and doing another album, which seemed like a great idea. But as we started to write it, I think it became obvious to both of us that it had the potential to be a more universal kind of idea of the fact that, as a humanity, we're all stuck on this little blue ball spinning through space, and that we should really look at what we have in common more than we would do better to think of what we have in common rather than what we disagree on. And so it just kind of became about that. And then, of course, having Mavis join us on it was, unbelievable, organic, the way it happened. I don't know that any of us really know who asked her. She just kind of
Mavis Staples just showed up one day?
Yeah, she just appeared, and what better ambassador for, that message,
Yeah, John, what did Mavis Staples bring to the song?
Wow. Well, one of the greatest voices of all time, for starters. But
Yes.
Like Michael was saying, too, though, with her history with the Staples singers and everything, they really pioneered songs about togetherness and, trying to work together for a better future. And so she brought a whole history of that.
Tom, what did you think Mavis Staples brought to the track?
I've been a fan of Mavis Staples for a long time. Became aware of her, of course, through her family, Staples singers who I loved. And was listening to them in the late 60s, I guess, first time I really heard about them. Mavis has done a lot of work on her own as well. The album she did with Prince, to me, was standout, was killer. Really dug it. But she's just a great presence. Like Mike said, I think she and the family were the embodiment of social consciousness, I guess you would say. Something that we need right now in a big, big way. So bringing her in, plus the sound of her voice, I mean, it's instantly recognizable. Bang, that's Mavis.
Right.
She's the only one who sounds like that. So it was a plus all the way around.
I want to pick up on what Michael said with you, Patrick, the idea that this song says, walk this road with me. Why is that an important message for people to hear during these sort of uncertain times?
Well, kind of obvious, probably the listeners out there, that what's happening in the world. We are so divided at this point in our history. It's more important than ever, I think, to, let people know that we're all sort of in this together, whether you like it or not. It's one world, and you better wake up because, we have a long way to go, hopefully.
Knock wood.
And, if we don't pull it together as a species, then, we're putting ourselves in greater jeopardy than ever. So, it's important. I think a lot of people feel this way, obviously. But, maybe it's not being said that much in music these days. And, it doesn't really matter exactly what position you're coming from, because in reality, we all have to walk this road together. Will add that, this song is really kind of to me, the first time I ever heard the track, I thought this is the kind of song that really makes sense for a band like ours. It's really gospel, roots gospel kind of music. And then having Mavis sing on it, who to me, one of her great strengths, the whole family, was their dedication to gospel music. And she really brought that voice to the track. And, I just want to add that in there anyway.
That's so interesting. You called it roots gospel. The kind of music that you make. Has it always been that way?
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
We've, I think that's an influence that we have. Not that we're, hardcore Baptists or anything, but I think we have all observed the, spiritual music and gospel in a, maybe a more southern kind of a representation. So to me, that's a part of of who we are. We're really a blues-based band, I think, and I think gospel music is maybe at the root of all of that. I think maybe it predates blues. It maybe is blues. Gospel music kind of was the voice of blues as we know it, I think.
When I say blues to you, what does that mean, Michael?
It means the one true form of American music: jazz, blues, gospel. I think it's probably one of the greatest gifts to, if there is a culture in America, because we are a melting pot. The La Marea Humana, the human tide is as natural as the birds migrating south for the winter, and probably something we should think more in terms of managing and accommodating rather than trying to forbid or a blockade, because it's what we are as human beings. It's what we do naturally. That's why we got up on two legs in the first place, is to move, and to migrate. And I think we bring something greater than ourselves when we do that. This country, if you were going to really boil it all down to who has a right to be here, as far as African American influence on our culture, it's probably one of the greatest influences on our culture. Of things that we think of as American, our music, our arts, that's truly ours. It comes from the African American culture. But the indigenous people were already here. The African people didn't choose to come here. The Spanish were here 100 years before us, so the only real invaders are all us Europeans who came over. So if you're going to have a problem with that, you got to start there,
I think early rock musicians recognized that there was something greater to be drawn from music by putting together the two basic American art, musical forms, one being, gospel, blues, the other being country, maybe more Anglican, mountain music, and, people like Elvis Presley and, Jerry Lee Lewis. They saw that, and, they were white guys who saw the value in, blues and gospel and married that into that Anglican country form that they were kind of grew up on, and really in a way invented a new music with Little Richard and Fats Domino and Chuck Berry, people like that. And that's the music kind of that we still celebrate. You know?
I think cross-pollination, like Pat said, is what our essence is as musicians and us just as Americans. You know, I mean, that's
Tom,
what we are. You know,
I'm going to get your take on this. For people who are listening, who should they go out to? What blues musician should they, after this interview's over, take a listen to? You've got good taste, I can tell.
I thought you said take a listen as in a song.
No. Who should they listen to?
So you're asking me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm spacing. I didn't sleep last night. I'm not here. I listened to a lot of blues growing up, a lot. Mostly electric, but I got into acoustic blues and stuff when I was in college. But, you know, the Three Kings, first of all, Freddie, Albert, and Beebe. Listen to them a lot. Listen to James Cotton a lot. Listen to... I'm not going to come up with everything I want right now, but
that's okay.
A lot of really great musicians, and got to meet some of them, which was truly earth-shaking for me. Because I listened to them so much, and meeting them later on when we actually started doing something musically, and you're kind of on the same platform, so to speak, it was outrageous.
I bet.
And, you know, there's great guys, man. They're good people. And their music, it's hard to go up to somebody and say, man, your music really changed my life, you know, but it did. So I learned a lot from that kind of music, and R&B as well. Listened to a lot of R&B, and Little Richard was a huge influence. So all that stuff kind of melds together. I listened to some Elvis too early on, but I think that's an important thing to bring up because there's so many influences in modern music today, and there was back then. But this band brings all that together, along with what Pat mentioned. What I call it Americana now because that's an easy cover to cover a lot of different styles.
Yeah.
And you add that to gospel, blues, rock and roll, and stick it all together, and acoustic stuff as well, and you kind of get the Doobie Brothers with harmonies.
My guests are the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald, Tom Johnston, John McFee, and Patrick Simmons. They're here for a listening party for their new album, Walk This Road. Let's play another track from this song. We're going to play Here to Stay. The vocals come in without instrumentation. What went into that decision? Who wants to take that?
I think John went into that decision. John Shanks, our producer. He kind of did that in the studio when nobody was there. He snuck it in there. He was like, no. He called me about it. He said, what do you think about this? And yeah, go for it, man. And we tried it, and it's pretty cool.
Let's take a listen to Here to Stay.
Yeah, I'm riding wild horses. Grab the reins and fly away. Lost in rock and roll heaven. And you know that it's here to stay.
You're listening to my conversation with the Doobie Brothers about their latest album, Walk This Road. We'll have more after a quick break. This is all of it.
Welcome to the spotlight. And 1,000 shades of red.
This is all of it on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. Let's continue my conversation with the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald, Tom Johnston, John McFee, and Patrick Simmons. Their latest album is called Walk This Road. Let's pick it up with John explaining how the group keeps things creative in the studio after so much success.
For this band, it's always been about trying to find new ways to express things, and like was being discussed earlier, this group draws on a lot of different styles and elements, and so it makes getting creative interesting because you can go, well, what if you did this? And instead of, like Pat asked me to play fiddle on a song or whatever it might be, it changes the direction a little bit. And there's just a lot of different ways you can approach any song, but it starts with the material, and you've got to have something to say and try to find a unique way to say it.
How do you stay creative, Pat?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Smoke a lot of pot. No, I'm kidding.
Sort of.
No, it's just how do you stay creative? Good question. I think it's you have to dedicate yourself to the process of doing that. It's not something that you're going to sit around and go, okay, I have this flash of inspiration. It's like, you got to go in there like you want it. Like you want something, you want to create. I don't want to say it's like a job because it's not a job, but it's a dedication to a process. You have to go, okay, now I want to write a song. How am I going to do that? Well, you have to, work at it. You find yourself, for me, it's always been, and I think it's probably the same for all of us, you find that place that you're comfortable. You sit down with your instrument and you begin to, explore and experiment until you maybe find a melody or a riff or something that you like. Sometimes it's, you're watching television or you're reading a newspaper or something, and you see a phrase and that's inspiring, and then that points you in another direction. Or you hear a song from somebody else's tune, and you go, "Oh, I'd love to write a song like that." And but you have to leave yourself open to it, and explore it. Work at it a little bit, right?
Is that the same for you, Michael? That you have to be open to the world to stay creative?
You do. It's like you come in with the tools in your toolbox that you have developed over the years, but hopefully that you hope will lead you to something you haven't done before, like Pat said, and you have to be open for that. It's funny that whole songwriting journey, probably not that long ago, I can remember having the thought in my car somewhere like, I wonder if I'll ever write another song. I don't even know if I can do that anymore. Yeah. And then,
Really?
The next thing you know, we're in the middle of the studio writing songs, and then you get that thing going that you haven't experienced in a while, and you start to kind of just get started, and the record's over. And you're going, wow, why don't I keep going? Because I might actually, come up with something even, but you have to, know when to quit. And I think what it did do for all of us is open the possibility or present the potential possibility to maybe do another record and see where we could go with that, which is not something I saw coming or any of us did. I don't think. We started out doing an EP, and it turned into an album. And so I think we all kind of share the idea that it would be fun to try to do another one, and try some different approaches to that,
Did you get writer's block? Were you joking there?
No, I always get writer's block.
Really?
I mean, well, there are those moments where you kind of get something going in your head, and you start to kind of like, you can't put ideas down fast enough, but then there are those long dry periods where you wonder if you'll ever do it again, and I've had plenty of those,
Thank goodness for cell phones.
Yes, no kidding.
Technology, it's true. That's the good side of technology.
Really, it's really helps.
Yeah.
We've heard about John Shanks a lot. How would you describe John Shanks' production style?
John is like a studio cat, man. He's a studio quality guitar player, and it doesn't matter what style, pretty much. He's really, really good. Writing with John, you mean, or just in the studio?
In the studio.
It's fast. Things get done in a hurry, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's very efficient. When you come, I always describe it this way to everybody. When you come in that house, it's all about being in a studio as well as a place to write. You take a write, and you go into the writing room, and you sit down. There's a computer there, and there's some ideas you get with guitars, and or he's got a keyboard that he plays, whatever. And you get the idea fleshed out there, and you send that down to the studio, which is downstairs, and you go down there, and it's all Pro Tools. It's all laid out, what you did up there, because it's all done with timing and all that. And then you started, really going to the bones of the song, what it's about, what it's going to, you've already got the chord changes, but you're starting to go for some instrumentation. You do the lead vocal early to give the song direction, I guess. And it's a pretty interesting way to work. And then you bring in the drummer, because so far you're using a machine, right? And then you bring in a real drummer. and that adds something to any track pretty much. And bass comes in a little later, and as the song presents itself lyrically and you put backgrounds on it and different ideas, then the song builds and you get the finished product, which may get changed midstream, and did on a couple of songs. You just completely turn it around and go to a different direction, even though you're still keeping the basic idea, but the chord changes even changed a little bit.
You're good with that? Is that something?
That was fine. Yeah, there's 2 songs like that I can think of that I was involved with, and it was all for the better. More of an experimentation thing, and tried different techniques of guitar playing, different... this is another thing John's really good for. Well, what if we did this? What if we did that? And you always hear that when you're in the recording process. But just coming up with a guitar line and a different attitude and bringing the drums back, to redo the drums. And it really changes the whole feel of the song. There's one song in particular I'm thinking about, but there's actually 2 that occurred on. Call Me was like that, and New Orleans was really like that. We completely refaced that whole thing.
It's been interesting hearing you talk. I've heard you say openness, experimentation. It sounds like that's become really important to you, Patrick.
Relentless slave driver, I think, is a better term. It's recording is fun. It's supposed to be fun, and whatever we do with it, I think that's what we're looking for as much as anything. It's for want of a better word, it's a stimulating process. It's one of those things that when you're working on stuff, if you find something that you're happy with, it just brightens up your whole outlook. And that's kind of the whole thing. It's a high, really, of its own making. When it's something we always dreamed of. I think when we started out, there was no home studio or home recording. If you were going to record...
There was a basement, though.
If you wanted to record something, it was a reel-to-reel tape recorder. My father was a school principal, and he used to borrow a tape recorder and bring it home. And, I'd tape on it. The first time I ever heard my voice, I go, that's not me. What is that? No, that's how your voice sounds. I go, no, that can't be. That's not my voice. But that's how, we started. We didn't really have that advantage. And then, when you get into a recording studio, it's like, this is a dream come true. You have multiple tracks, all that you've ever imagined about a band expands into this, symphonic view of creativity. And you start to understand, that's how the Beatles made these records sound so great. That's how George Martin did it. And we never knew that, we just imagined, they have this room full of an orchestra and all these guys playing instruments and it all. That's not how modern records are made. You start with a basic track and then you build on it. And George Martin, in a certain sense, and a few others, obviously he wasn't the only one, but they invented modern recording. Les Paul, stacking tracks on one another. And it was a dream come true. And that's, now with Pro Tools and digital recording, it's like you can literally hundreds of tracks, and bands do that. They just keep, probably bands us. You keep laying tracks on to make things sound good, and then you can take things away as well as put things on. So you have this freedom that's just, it's unimaginable. And I know anyone listening out there that has a home recording setup understands what I'm talking about. It's a dream come true for musicians these days to be able to create in such a way that gives you this freedom. And it's so much fun,
That was my conversation with the Doobie Brothers. Their latest album is called Walk This Road. Next, a live performance from the band OK Go, who are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the video of their song, Here It Goes Again. OK Go's latest album is called And the Adjacent Possible. This is all of it.